So I told Bruce to make that short. He failed. And I hope you notice the inherent contradiction in what he had to say. He said, well, first of all, no one's ever introduced me as like a beautiful person, so thanks. But then he also said he sees me in the morning when I wake up and when I go to bed at night. So I don't know, there's something about that introduction just doesn't hang together, Bruce. But I'm grateful you know to count you as a dear friend. How many of you are here for the first time in chapel? You've never been at chapel at Gordon before. Great, welcome. So me too, I've never been here before either. So welcome to me, I guess. This morning, I want to share with you a talk, and I already know I have too much information. I'm going to go at high speeds, and a talk kind of in 3 acts. And first, we're going to start with a postmodern parable. At least that's what I'm calling it. In recent days, AT&T has been running a series of television advertisements to promote their new cellular phone service. Have you seen these ads? There's this adult moderator. His name is Beck Bennett. And he's seated in an elementary school, kind of, some of you are nodding your heads, right, around a table with 3, 4 really cute and precocious little school kids, right? And I read about this a little bit, and apparently these ads, they all started kind of on script, you know, like there were things the kids were all supposed to say, but the thing they produced in the end wasn't on script at all because these kids were so cute and amazing that something completely different came out. But in this series of ads, which are, as I said, are very clever, there's one that really caught hold of me, and I want to share it with you this morning. We're going to play it right now, and then I'm going to make some comments. We'll play it again and lead us to some reflections, I think, about ourselves. Here we go.
Okay, why?
More is better than less, because if there's more less stuff, then you might want to have some more, and your parents just don't let you because there's only a little bit.
Right.
We want more. Like, you really like it, you want more.
I follow you.
It's not complicated. More is better. And AT&T has the nation's largest 4G network.
That again in a little bit, and the words are very important. So super cute, right? But very disquieting too, if you were really listening to what that little girl was pleading for. It starts out with her expression of desire. We want more. We want more. But there's something standing in the way. It's our parents, because there's only a little bit and they won't let us have more. And then the authority of the parents and their obstacle is overcome because in the end, what AT&T comes on and says, more is better. And we're going to provide it for you. Let's play it one more time. Make sure the sound is up, and then we'll get on with the rest of the conversation here. Listen to it carefully.
Who thinks more is better than less? Okay, why?
More is better than less, because if there's more less stuff, then you might want to have some more, and your parents just don't let you because there's only a little bit.
Right.
We want more. Like, you really like it, you want more.
I follow you.
It's not complicated. More is better. And AT&T has the nation's largest 4G network.
Okay, isn't that brilliant? Aren't you impressed with how much of a story you can tell in 30 seconds? More is better. More is better. So this whole business of more, longing and desire, it's core to our daily being. And for some of us here, longing can be very virtuous. We can long to know God, the deepest fiber of our being. We can long for justice and for meaning and for relationships. So our longing can be a passion to love God and serve Him at any cost. But you know the next point here, right? Our longing can also be very treacherous. It can be all about the satisfaction of base pleasures that we have, a drive for being self-important, and all the ruthless, immoral, and unspeakable things that we're willing to think, say, and even do to satisfy the longings and desires of our heart. We're real contradictions, aren't we? More is better. We want more. We want more. We want more. That's the little girl's message to us. Well, there's another layer to this, I think, in our contemporary society as well, because as we seek to construct ourselves, that is to really align our longings and desires with right causes, we really these days are often creating what we might call a postmodern self. And I'm using the word postmodern here in a very popular kind of sense, not in the more philosophical sense. Essentially, the self we're constructing is really a consumer self. It is driven by our desire to have more. And in this arrangement of wanting more, there's some really interesting questions that come up. Because we really need to ask, is more truly better? Because in the middle of it, we find some curious and troubling contradictions in this world of more. Consider, for instance, even though we have an unprecedented level of options and choices these days, are we really more free? Or even though we have abundant information, are we really more wise? And even though we have vast relational networks, how many Facebook friends do you have? Who's the winner out here today, by the way? Who is the most? Does that really lead to more intimacy with others or even with God? We find ourselves discontented. We're amid a struggle to find meaning, authenticity, love, and to create a world that's sustainable. So here are the girl's words again. You really like it and you want more. You want more. You might want more, but your parents won't let you because there's just a little bit. AT&T assures you it's not complicated. More is better. More is better. The consumer self. Well, you might think this is a new story this morning, but it's actually not. There's an ancient narrative that really bears this very same thing out. It's also an account of longing and an account of desire. And it's the beginning of our human story. Remember the account in Genesis 3, 1 through 8? You know, way back there in the Old Testament, that early book in the Bible. There's a story there, another story of discontent. It's the discontent of Adam and Eve. Now, think about this for a moment. We're told in the scriptures that Adam and Eve were image bearers of God. When you read the account, if you study Genesis carefully, what you discover is they lacked no good thing. Eve was made for Adam. They were in an intimate relationship with each other. They were in an intimate relationship with God, who came to them in the cool of every afternoon and met with them. They had a meaningful vocation. They were to tend the garden, take care of the animals. They were to be fruitful. And they lacked no provision. They were abundantly provided for. So, they lacked no good thing. But something important in the Genesis account to point out this morning is that they did not have it all. They did not have it all. Do you know that? There was something they lacked that God told them they couldn't have, and that was fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Right? So they had everything they needed, but they didn't have it all. And it was the serpent's treachery, his marketing, if you will, his marketing, that summoned them to have passion for something that they did not have, a thing forbidden to them. And there was something in the way of that fruit that they wanted. There was a parent figure called God. He had forbidden them to have it, and yet they ignored his warning because they believed that more really would be better for them. And they went and possessed the fruit. So, ungrateful to God for what they had and disobedient to God, they sacrificed something incredibly precious. Let's call it fidelity. Prior to that, they had enjoyed fidelity with creation. They had enjoyed fidelity with each other, the creature to the creature. and of course they had fidelity with God. But in making the move to consume the fruit that they were told did not belong to them, in seeking more, in seeking to have it all, to fulfill what they thought they were entitled to, they sacrificed fidelity. Just a little side note, but there's a sense in which a lot of the coursework here at a school like Gordon College exists because of that infidelity. Follow with me here a little bit. Because one of the things that we need to study, we study about ecology and environmental concerns. Why? Because our fidelity with creation is broken. And we study psychology. Why? Well, because we're struggling with our guilt and shame. And that was what Adam and Eve encountered. And we do sociology and we do gender studies and on and on and on and talk about our relationship to each other. Why? Well, because we lost fidelity with each other at that point in the garden. And then there's philosophy and theology and even art. Many of the disciplines that exist because we're seeking to recover the fidelity that was lost there in the garden. There's yet one more expression of this lack of fidelity. It's the Tower of Babel. There's a sense in which the Tower of Babel is a supreme symbol of this infidelity, a picture of absolute hubris. And I bet you haven't read this story in a while either, but if you go in and look at it, there's some surprising things, because on the face of it, the people who built Babel had a really great vision. Did you know that? They wanted to keep their language all together, so they were after unity. They had a tremendous vision for building something no one else had ever built before. Because they learned to make bricks in an oven, to have fired bricks, they could build taller than ever before. So they had technology to do something spectacular. And they had great ambition. So unity, technology, power, ambition, amazing, amazing objectives. And they built this thing. But their scheme had a fatal flaw, right? As they sought to have more. What was it? They said, well, let's do this and let's make a name for ourselves. Did it completely apart from God. Was more better? No. More was a disaster. An expression of hubris, an expression of the infidelity that their parents, Adam and Eve, had begun who knows how many thousand years before that in the garden. By the way, just a side note, the tabernacle and the temple that are built later are expressions of industry, unity, vision, technology, all done what? To glorify the name of God, not done to make a name for oneself, but to make a name, to increase the name of God in the world. So it wasn't just the building of things, it wasn't the presence of architecture that was problematic. It was a sense for desiring more for oneself and not paying attention, attending to the glory of God. Well, the good news this morning, even beneath the curse that Adam and Eve witnessed, is that God did not abandon Adam and Eve. And he hasn't abandoned us this morning. In fact, a new Adam has already come, Jesus Christ, who's been given to restore all things, to usher in a new heaven and a new earth. So this morning, we are not people without hope. We're people, probably in fact, of all people this morning, we have the reason to be most hopeful, because a new Adam has come and undone the work of the old Adam. The infidelity that was created, the fidelity that was broken, is being restored now and will be restored by Christ. And I think this is where the arts come in, because I think, rightly conceived, the arts can be an essential part of this restoration of fidelity. I think the arts are an important counterpoint to the consumer self that I mentioned earlier on. Because the arts aren't mostly about consuming things and acquiring and then abandoning things. The arts are primarily about the making of culture itself. And the arts have a lot of purposes, and there's lots of ways to think about it biblically and as Christians. But two categories I'd like to suggest to you this morning, and then we'll look just at a couple examples as we wrap up. First of all, the arts have the capacity to be prophetic. Art and artists can speak truth to power. They always have. Art and artists can speak truth to power, can raise questions and objections, and be involved in restoring justice, goodness. So the arts can be prophetic, speak truth to power. But the arts can also be deeply pastoral. Art and artists can bind up the wounds and contribute to the healing of the disconsolate and the brokenhearted. Remember in the scriptures when Saul was troubled, what did he do? He had David come in and play music for him. And I bet in your own experience, in your own music listening habits, there's music that you put on to care for your soul. Or there's poetry you read, or there's pieces of artwork that you return to. And so the arts have two very important functions, and they follow right along biblical lines, which is to be prophetic and to be pastoral. And there's three particular ways in which I think this recreation occurs, and these are the things we'll look at as we kind of end our time this morning. First of all, the arts allow us to handle the stuff of creation. Again, this is different than consuming. This is about making, and I'm especially thinking of the visual arts, but actually I think we could make the case for writing and for dance and for theater and music, all the other arts that we participate in creation. Here's a picture of a small painting. I know it doesn't look small on this screen, but it's actually about 12 inches square or maybe 15 inches square. It's painted by an artist whom I don't know. His name is Stephen Taylor, called Oak After Snow. I don't know if this man is a person of faith or not. But let me read this, or you can read with me, this little description. I discovered this artist reading a book called The Pleasures and Sorrows of Work by a writer who's one of my favorites, Alain de Botton, who is clearly not a believing person and makes the point of saying he's an atheist, parenthetically, but he has great hopes for the arts. He sees museums, for instance, as new places of worship and artists as the new priests. So he wants transcendence. He longs for it. But this is what he says about Stephen Taylor. Stephen Taylor has spent much of the last 2 years in a wheat field in East Anglia repeatedly painting the same oak tree under a range of different lights and weathers. He was out in 2 feet of snow last winter, and this summer at 3 a.m, he lay on his back tracing the upper branches of the tree by the light of a solstice moon. Sounds pretty romantic, doesn't it? Sounds like a lot of hardship, too. But why would someone do that? Well, because creation bears witness to the glory and the power of God. And even for those who don't believe, Paul tells us in Romans 1 that creation bears witness. Creation is compelling, and artists are drawn to participate in it. I wonder how much of the art ever made over all time has just been in response and in reaction to and a reflection on the natural world itself. Stunning stuff, creation bears witness. And as we participate in it, we're about restoring the fidelity to the world that God intended initially. The next thing, though, that the arts lead us to is to also embrace the tragedy and the glory of our humanity. I've already suggested here that Adam and Eve were people who were made in the image of God. Imagine they were made in the image of God. Oh, wait a minute. Imagine we're all made in the image of God. We bear something of the image of God in us, male and female together. It's a lot to unpack. And it's not just believing people who bear the image of God, it's all people. That's why when an injustice is done to someone who may not believe in God at all, we're troubled. Why? Well, because they bear the image of God, and that's wrong. So we know that to be true. And the capacity of men and women to do extraordinary things never ceases to impress us. We possess the image of God. But we're capable also of unspeakable evil. And as I said earlier, even though the world seems to have more choice and more information and more connection, and we're more connected into this global world, it doesn't seem that it has caused violence to cease at all, does it? Or injustice. So here we are. We are creatures who are caught up in the glory and the tragedy of being human. This is what Madeleine L'Engle says about this. Now, Madeleine L'Engle, some of you know her as a fiction writer and author of children's literature, though adults love it. And she's also a deep woman of faith. She says, to try to talk about art and Christianity is, for me, one and the same thing. And it means attempting to share the meaning of my life. What gives it for me? Its tragedy and its glory. As Christians, we enter into, as artists who are Christians, we enter into the tragedy and the glory of life. That's where we're at. That's what it means to be human. One of the greatest witnesses I think that we could have as a Christian community is to live in the world as if we were human and celebrate the glory of being made in the image of God, but also groan as all of creation groans over the tragedy of being human as well. Without losing hope, realizing we have a new Adam, and that God is going to come and is now restoring and will someday perfectly restore all things in the new heaven and the new earth. Now, there's some paintings on view here at Gordon College that were already mentioned to you that deal with this, the glory and the tragedy of being human. They're painted by my dear friend right down here, Bruce Herman, who he and Makoto Fujimura have done a whole series of large and important works responding to T.S. Eliot's lengthy poem, The Four Quartets. And so last night I said, hey, Bruce, send me some images. I'm giving this talk tomorrow morning. I'd like to share them with the group. So real quickly, here are 4 paintings, and they're quite large. They're not quite that large, but they're pretty big, aren't they? Almost that big, right, Bruce? This is called Spring, Summer, Autumn. You can see responding to the 4 seasons of the year, but the 4 seasons of life as well, right? And in this work is a struggle to understand the glory and the tragedy of being human. Winter. So, the arts allow us to participate in and explore the meaning of creation. The arts allow us to participate in and explore the meaning of being creatures. And finally, the arts allow us to participate in and explore the meaning of our Creator and the nature of our Creator, to ponder the very mystery of God. Now, at a school like Gordon College, I hope, and I know, you are encouraged, or if you come here, decide you're going to come here next fall, you'll be encouraged to know God personally and to recognize Jesus as Lord and Savior and to know Christ really as your brother. And that's absolutely right. The Scriptures make the point that God has made himself fully known to us in Christ, and we can come to know Christ even as our brother. But don't head off in the wrong direction on that one. God and his ways are vastly beyond our ways of knowing. And much of who God is and his ways are a mystery to us. And great art has often pondered the mystery of God. All about God that we don't know. Even though all the while we can know him personally and personally well. And even know Christ as our brother. So here's an artist who was not a believer, but well known, Mark Rothko. And listen to what he writes about painting. I'm interested only in expressing basic human emotions: tragedy, ecstasy, doom, and so on. And the fact that a lot of people break down and cry when confronted with my pictures shows that I can communicate these basic human emotions. The people who weep before my pictures are having the same religious experience as I had when I painted them. Now, Rothko didn't claim to be a religious man. Certainly not a Christian man, and he tragically took his life midway in his career out of great despair. But in his painting, in his act of painting, here's one of his works, he was after God, I believe. He was in a quest to know God, to know the Creator. And this piece is one of 14 that sits in the Rothko Chapel in Houston, and 14 paintings following the pattern of 14 Stations of the Cross. Did Rothko ever come to know God? I can't say. I'm not his judge. Was his act of painting about this, a pursuit to know the Creator? Seems to me absolutely it was. Why don't we end with this? A painter by the name of Joel Sheasley, good friend of mine, and Bruce's as well, and this is a large painting he did, a few years ago called Holy, Holy, Holy. It just seems to me, here's a piece of work that explores the creation and explores what it means to be a creator amid this creation, and actually, in doing so, explores the very idea of the Creator and the glory of God. Very beautiful kind of piece. We're absolutely out of time. We tried to do a little talk about culture today, and about the Old Testament scriptures, and about art and aesthetics and philosophy and how you're constructing yourself, and on and on. Too much for 30 minutes. But I hope this morning, as we leave, and before you leave, I hope you'll pause today and ask yourself, what is the nature of your longings and your desires? What are they directed toward? And maybe this week, during Arts Week at Gordon, you can think a little bit about how art might help you in that process of coming to know those things. Not because it can save you, but because it can help you meaningfully engage creation, one another, and the Creator who made it all. Let's close in prayer. God, we thank you for your many gifts. They're all good. And I pray, Lord, you'll leave us this morning, leave us as we leave this place, in pursuit of fidelity and restoring right relationships, longing for goodness and beauty. We give you all praise and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.